Hey everyone, I'm Kelly Fuge. Welcome back to my work, this series of videos I'm making and this story I'm telling. Thank you for watching, everyone. It's been a while. I wanted to correct and clarify some more things. Hopefully as I get better at this, I won't have to always go back and correct what I say, but I think this is good for me to do. I titled, I'm gonna make these next two videos, I'm gonna break them into two videos, and the title is going to be Back to the Drawing Board. Because I realized in the last one I made, even though it was a little better, I get a little better all the time, my video titled Tyrant's Plan, World Domination, Kelly's Plan, Overcome Resentment. I felt like I was kind of winging it, which is fine, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to stick with all the references I made and all the books and stuff that I showed you guys. And then I had a few more things I still wanted to clarify and just kind of correct, from my Kelly's Confessions video. And just I wanted to talk a little bit more, a lot more about, this idea of resentment and how I'm still struggling against this. It's not like I've overcome this. But anyway, so here we go, back to the drawing board. I gotta keep talking because I'm gonna try to keep this close to an hour. So, here goes. I want to continue to correct my overall tone and some more things I said in the Kelly's Confession video. The main thing was the resentful tone and trying to get a little too preachy at people without having done some more work on myself. This was partly because I was exposing some past behaviors I was not proud of myself for. And that led me to want to call out people listening or people from my past. It wasn't the most graceful way to confess, and I want to take a step back from these videos and clean up some things in my own life before I can put out another message. So, yeah, again, that's why it's taken me so long to kind of come back to myself. And I'm really trying to figure this out about myself, where I think it's a good quality that I have to just kind of dive into things and be like, all right, here we go. But then sometimes the negative result of that is that I don't plan and I don't really check in with myself and see what I'm capable of, so yeah, I mentioned I wanted to do some more work on myself, which I have been doing a lot of, and I've kind of started several projects in my life at once, and that a lot of the time that gets me into trouble, and so, but it's also been really good. So I want to talk a bit about what I've been doing in my life. I'm, as of now, basically self-employed. I've been going, besides the work that I do with these two women, and we're gardening, landscaping and gardening, and I've been using a lot of my own tools, doing gardening work, doing a little bit of house type maintenance and stuff for people, which has been very good for me. It's definitely keeping me honest, and so I think part of what this resentment in me comes from, when I do kind of lash out at people, is that I wrote that I was exposing some past behaviors I was not proud of myself for, and that led me to want to call people out, or people listening, or people from my past. So, right, that's this dynamic that I've been working on with myself is well, yeah, I understand that in order to tell people, what really is going on in the world and all these unhealthy things, that most unhealthy ways that people are acting in the world is out of this place of just basically low self-worth and low self-esteem. So whenever I go to admit, that that's what's going on with me and that's what's going on in the world generally for most people, then, I get defensive, and that's been a problem my whole life too, is that a lot of the time I don't want to tell people things that I think are negative about, or really set up boundaries for myself with other people, or tell people things I don't like, because I'm afraid of being called out. So I figure, I'm starting to balance it a little bit better. But anyway, so I just wanted to, again, take a step back from that. And, while I do want to point out that most people listening, like, you have these dynamics going on within you too, and I just, instead of like attacking you for that, I want to lead by example and show that, like, this is how I've been acting. I'm trying to correct my behavior, and I have to realize that I'm not just going to be some healed, enlightened person, like, all at once, so, okay. So I'm going to link a lot of stuff in this video, but one I really want to draw people's attention to, because it's short and sweet and to the point, like always, but Konrad Rogoz episode 81 of his show This Week in Tyranny on YouTube. He titled it Love, Choice, and Confidence. And he talks about how we need to cultivate our own self-love and confidence, and we need to actually care about ourselves. We need to understand that we are good enough to have the things that we want, but that doesn't mean we just get them. I want to build up that message more in what I'm trying to say. So that goes along with, like, I'm trying to get rid of this whole, a sort of, you could call it, like, I'm not Catholic, but it has a sort of Catholic guilt tone to it. I'm like, I'm going to confess and then I'll absolve my sins. It's like, no, like what he's saying in that video, and yeah, just the whole message that he's really been working on that I really, love, is that, like, we need to cultivate that self-love within ourselves. And he's called it like a healthy selfishness. It's like, what do you as an individual want to do? And I've had to really ask myself that a lot recently. It's like, well, what do I really want to do? What am I really, motivated by? Obviously, you have to be driven by truth, like, above all else. So you got to be honest, but you can't be honest with other people unless you're honest with yourself. And, so I've really been working on, like, just trying to be more selfish in my life, like, not in a way that's going to, and that it's possible to do this in a way that's not going to hurt other people. Like, we've been told so much in our lives that, oh, don't be so selfish, like, give all your money to us, or, yeah, like, volunteer for some charitable organization. It's like, no, dude, that's the whole problem here, is that people really aren't truly self-directed. Like, they don't understand that whatever they're the most, like, drawn to and driven to, as long as it's not hurting other people, like, is what they should be doing. And I had this attitude a lot in college. Like, this is what they do to you there too, is like, God, there's so many clubs and cliques and stuff for you to join, and they really do make you feel bad for being a human being. And for being self-interested. It's all about, like, how are we going to help the world? Oh my God, the poor starving people in Africa. And it's like, yeah, those are problems, but you're not going to be able to help anyone else if you're so resentful about giving yourself away to all these causes, like, you're not. So that's the point. And I want to build that up and kind of, like, go off of what he's saying, but say it in my own words and through my own experience. So, saying I was wrong, right? I was getting a little too focused on all these things that I was doing wrong in the world, and the whole point of this message is to point out all of these things so we can fix them. But fixing these things is going to take individual action. And what Konrad was saying in this episode that I'll link, 81, is that individual action needs to be driven by love for yourself. I want to clarify and build on what I've been saying in the last videos. So, it's like, again, I don't want to sit here and just confess about all the things I've done wrong. It's like, fine, yeah, I was acting in manipulative ways, and the main point of that was I was trying to put my value as an individual in how much I could, like, help other people, and then I would, like, really overdo it a lot of the times, like, really over encourage people, or, like, just totally spread myself super thin and think that I could go prop everyone up and help everybody. And it's like, fixing these things is going to take individual action, right? It's like, well, individual action doesn't mean just individual action to go, like, serve something that you think you should be doing. Like, it's like, you got to really sit down and think and really prioritize what that individual action goes to, so, like, all of this, like, preparation and everything I'm trying to do is, like, build up myself, build up my confidence. Like, I've been working on some really core things that have been really good for me. Like, for instance, for the last year I've been doing a martial art practicing a martial art called Jeet Kune Do, and maybe I'll link my teacher's YouTube. But anyway, you know, that for me, the whole point of that is like, okay, I got to build myself up so that I respect myself, and it's great working on my body. It's great getting out some of that aggression because, you know, I am really angry about these, you know, horrific things going on in the world, and I'm angry about having been, you know, controlled my whole life. So I was like, well, I'll just punch something, you know, or someone, and like work on that, like not in an aggressive way, but in a way to cultivate that inner anger and then prioritize it towards the right thing. So that's what the individual action means. You know, it doesn't mean, oh, just like be a selfless person and like get rid of your ego and just be this moldable putty to whatever people want you to do. It's like, no, you got to decide what you're doing and then direct yourself to it and prioritize your time. I obviously need to work on prioritizing my time, but I've gotten a lot better. So first, I'm going to get away from making this too much of a confession tone. I just want people to understand that the point of me explaining to people how I was acting wrong in the world was to make them feel a little bit more confident in taking this message in. I want to show that I'm not afraid of saying how I was wrong. We have to look at the things that aren't going well in our lives and fix them, and we have to care about ourselves enough to fix them. So yeah, like I want to, by kind of bearing my soul and you know, telling people like these things that I'm not proud of, you know, about how I was manipulating my best friend Tyler, and like generally how I was just kind of putting on a face most of my life and joining all these things to try and feel valuable and trying to get attention from men all the time. Like, you know, there are healthy ways to do that, and then, you know, there are unhealthy ways to do that, and the unhealthy ways are just when you totally submit yourself and you know, forget what you're supposed to be doing. So like I was trying to do all that and make these confessions and really just be like, hey, I was being really a manipulative, inauthentic woman, you know, so that people could see like, oh, okay, if Kelly's willing to fall on her face and fail a little bit and like, and then pick herself up, like maybe I could start to be honest with myself too. So this kind of goes along with that, like on the topic of meat, right? Eating meat and animal products. I don't want to become a vegan pusher, but I had to get that out because you guys have to know what eating meat is, and it's not good for you. And I won't emphasize that as much in the next videos, but I need to tell you guys that. There are some personal friends of mine who might be listening to this, so I have to get that out to people. Like, I'm not just going to be quiet about that, you know. Obviously, I'm not going to go around, like pushing that on people. But what's interesting is that through just pursuing that in my own life and really eating super healthy and really getting rid of a lot of this toxic stuff, like meat and animal products, like I've started to be around other people who are having that same mindset, you know, just about like, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore. Doing that is out of self-love. It's about caring about yourself, you know. But the point I'm trying to make is like, well, I'll just do that and lead by example. You know, it doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and tell you guys that it's fine, but like, I'm not going to push people, you know. On Tyler. Oh my God, it's been 13 minutes already. I got to move on this a little faster. I want to explain my psychology better to people and what happened after Tyler said no to me and cut me out of his life. I had to really start caring about myself more than I ever had, and I had to realize I have to make my own way in the world. I had to start making my own decisions. Part of me doing this was telling that story, telling this story is out of self-love, is my point. Like, I have to get this out. I have to get it off my chest. This will help demonstrate what we should all be doing in the world, you know. Not joining some club, not giving our money to charity, you know. And I had to have that experience of, you know, at that point, the most significant man in my life, like telling me no. Like no one had ever cut me out of their life like that. And for good reason, you know, because I was manipulating him and lying to him. And so it's like, well, I didn't like myself. That's why I was doing that. So then I had to go look at my life and be like, okay, instead of trying to just follow, you know, Tyler or anyone else, like what am I selfishly wanting to do with my life, you know? in a healthy way, right? Not in a way that's going to manipulate people or bring them down. Getting to that point of self-acceptance meant realizing that I could be a monster, and made me start to think about the ways I'd mistreated people. I realized the root of me manipulating Tyler was that I was being fake, and I was lying to myself about what I truly wanted in life. And so then I was resentful at him, so I tried to control him in order to feel better about myself. What I truly wanted, but was too afraid to do on my own, was to completely go my own way without being dependent on anyone. I've joined plenty of clubs in my life and plenty of religions, and I've tried to find my value in those. In other words, my whole life I've tried to find my inherent value as a being outside of myself somewhere, when it was actually in me all along. In a way, I did a similar thing with Tyler, where I thought I would be able to benefit from his planning and use that as direction in my life without really having to think for myself all the way. I thought, he has a great plan, I'll follow him and that will give me meaning in life, and maybe then I'll find another man and leave him. That was kind of my goal, was to just then find a partner to give me validation. So I kind of already touched on that, and I'm trying to move on this, so this goes along with that. On men and women. In one of these first videos I made, called KMF Mission, I said something like, men and women are just seeking attention from each other, which is leading to all these unhealthy dynamics in the world. I do think that men and women need to get their priorities straight individually before they can get along as partners and help each other raise children. But I want to clarify what I mean. I think men and women should be getting healthy attention from each other. However, I know in my own life I've been trying to break this cycle of dependence on men for validation. I've realized I've been so focused throughout my life on this inner battle of thinking I'm not valuable unless I have a sexual relationship with a man, or a partnership with a man, or if I'm following a man. What I have to do is get my own priorities straight and do the right thing because it's the right thing for me to do in my own life, and lead myself and value myself that way. I have to overcome these thoughts of not feeling valuable unless I can follow or get attention from men. But what I can do, and what I have been doing, is just focusing on healthy friendships with men, where we can appreciate each other and it doesn't have to be sexual or an all or nothing relationship. I have to give myself more credit for that, because in these last couple years, since Tyler and I parted ways, I started learning a martial art called JKD, and that's something I always wanted to do. There are mostly men in that class, and I formed solid friendships with them from doing that. It really helps me because I do need that masculine push in my life somehow, and really me doing that was a form of self-love too. So I'll get into this more in a different video. Like, I wanted to kind of correct that, like, in that video KMF mission that I made, I was like, yeah, men and women were just seeking attention from each other, and you know, in an unhealthy way, that is leading to a lot of unhealthy dynamics, like where men and women, we put our value in the opposite sex. Like, we're like, well, unless that person finds me attractive, or unless, you know, we're all in together and we have to like be attached at the hip and be partners, like, then I'm not valuable. And a relationship, no matter what kind of relationship it is never going to work. Like in that other video, Overcoming Resentment, I talked about like how then the control sets in, you know, like men and women do try to control each other. So like how I've tried to correct this in my own life is, you know, I've always been like I guess a tomboy, and I've really recently, I really stood up to my dad and basically kind of cut him out of my life, and like, so then of course it's like, well, I kind of have to replace that validation I was getting from him with something else. That's how it is with addictions, you know. And so throughout my whole life I've done this, though, which in one way was pretty intelligent of me, which is like, I recognized that I wasn't healthy enough because of that, you know, unhealthy relationship with my dad to like make a real, you know, solid partnership with a man work. So I would just like play with the guys. Like I'd play soccer with all the guys at recess in elementary school, and that was that way of getting that like healthy attention, you know. And I think that's great, and I really want to get more women to come to my martial arts class with me, because I think that's a great way that men and women can interact and not have to have these strings attached about it. So that's kind of what I'm working on in my life. So self-love versus instant gratification. I want to talk about how self-love is not instant gratification. A lot of the time we'll reach for addictive things, which gets us to put our value outside of ourselves, like what I was just talking about with basically my addiction to attention from men, you know. When we feel bad, we reach for some addiction that's not good for us instead of looking inward and asking ourselves why we feel bad. I'm definitely still working on some addictions, but I'm doing way better than I was. Shopping and spending money has been one of my addictions, and I have it under way more control than I did. So, right, instant gratification. Like, it's basically like, well, again, you got to come back to what's true, and are you being honest with yourself? Like, self-love is self-honesty. So if you are addicted to some instant gratification thing that's really just not good for you and unhealthy, and everyone knows what those are, it's like alcohol and, whatever shitty food, right? Or even like sex or whatever it is, like that's instant gratification. Like if it's not good for you but it fulfills a desire in the moment, it's like, well, that desire, you need to recognize what that desire is, but like you're never going to fulfill it by instant gratification things. So like this gets into money, and I've realized that it's like, well, the same dynamic happens with money. It's about how I spend it, right? We should want to be people who strive to be our best selves, and often we do have to spend money to do that. But we can work towards spending money less. When I say we have to spend money less, I mean let's find ways to do that are actually healthy for us. It's not this self-punishing thing. We just have to find a balance. We should push ourselves and work towards the things that we want in life. The problem with money for me has been that I just jump into purchasing things without sitting with myself and asking myself, do I really need that? A lot of the time I'll buy things to make myself feel better. And it's like, well, that's actually not really self-love if I think I need to buy something to feel better. However, I'm all for spending money on things that are going to improve myself. I've been working for myself for the last 3 months, being self-employed, and of course there are a lot of things I have to spend money on to do that, but those things are definitely better than addictions. Right, so I kind of already touched on all those things, but like, yeah, it's just a balance. It's really like, again, it kind of comes back to this whole problem I'm having and working on with like this jumping the gun thing that I do, like just jumping in without like just sitting with myself for a minute and being honest with myself. Like, do you really need that? Do you really feel that way? Like before you go shooting your mouth off about something, Kelly, like, what is it that you're really feeling? And, something that I do really need to work on is like, it's just straight up meditation. And look, I'm out here in nature and I'd like to just come out here and sit and, I'm always like flinging myself all over the place, and that's kind of a form of like, this trying to get away from myself is like spreading myself too thin, and like, I think a similar dynamic happens with money. It's like, I'll fling myself this way and that, I'll drive all over the place, like which is fun, which I love. Like it's a balance again, right? It's like, well, hell, if I want to go all the way up to the mountains, and drive up there, like that's great. I should do that because that's my self-direction, without like, disappointing other people by saying I want to do something when I actually don't, or without getting this pent up resentment and stuff from like having, done all these things. But like the same thing happens with money, where it's like if I bring it in, save it, conserve my energy, like then I can prioritize better. So it's really all about prioritizing, and to prioritize correctly, you have to be honest with yourself, which means you have to love yourself, which means you have to be honest about when you're doing things that are unhealthy. So addressing resentment, I have to strike more of this balance in the way that I explain these things, and it really comes down to how I talk to myself. I was thinking I had to do this self-punishing confession, and then that made me resentful at people who might be watching and who I've known throughout my life. I'm going to focus this on me as much as possible and lead by example. That's all I'm going to do. So, for example, I've been eating the healthiest I ever have in my life. I eat way less sugar, and I've pretty much quit eating meat and animal products. The question we should all ask ourselves is how we're going to go about our own self-improvement. You really have to sit with yourself and think about what you want to work on and how you're going to do that. This is what I've been doing for the last couple years in earnest. I just picked something small to do better. I've been working on spending less money and working for myself. There are plenty of things that I can do to improve myself that don't include money, right? So that's a great thing to realize too, is like a lot of the time, if you just sit and wait and go, do I really need to spend money on that? Do I really need to drive all the way over there to do that? Do I really want to? Like, that's already self-improvement, Just sit, just wait, like, don't rush, right? On the topic of healthy self-interest and confidence, I was trying to be what I thought other people wanted me to be in order to get love. That's my whole, story that I'm telling everyone about what happened between Tyler and I in these last basically 2 years after that I've really been finding myself. I was trying to be, we have to be self-interested individuals and realize that our unique experience in the person we are is unlike anyone else. You're an individual. It's not like you're just valuable just because you join a team or you do something. But whatever you bring to that team is something that no one else can bring, and you have to hone that in the most effective way possible, because what else are you here to do? And I'm going to get into this, but really, if you think about it, when I was talking about like the collectivists, right, and the communists and the Borg and, the monster and Stranger Things, like they're playing a very clever mind trick on everyone by going, look, join our team, you'll be valuable, you'll be loved, the government will take care of you, mommy and daddy government will give you everything you need, just vote for us, child of mine. And that is so sinister. And I'm gonna link another one of Konrad's episodes that was superb, and he titled it Emotional Dependence. And he talked about how the form of tyranny that is going to really put the nail in the coffin on humanity's, on our individualism and our freedom, is going to be in the form of this basically matrix, evil mother that eats her young, basically, and you can see that. And I'm going to get more into that. But anyway, you're not valuable just because, mommy and daddy government are going to take care of you. That's why you have to have this really, we do have to have this kind of lone wolf attitude for however long it takes in our individual lives, and then from that place we can work together. I'm going to pause because it's raining. I got to figure out what to do. We have a saying in Colorado, and it goes, if you don't like the weather, wait 5 minutes. So it changed. There's a mosquito. Anyway, I'm going to try to stay on topic. I was talking about this very clever manipulation that the collectivists and Satanists and Marxists, all these, same thing, right? Which is that, or promoting, and they promote it especially to young people because that's the next generation, right? So that's why you see so much like of these politicians push they direct their campaigns at young people. Like, for instance, when I was in college, like Obama was in office, and it was like, I'm on the winning team, rah rah Obama, he's so young and hip, I'm important because I'm part of this. But like, it's very subtle. It's not like you have that all the time, but all they need, from you is to be able to switch that on in you, and for it to, act when they want it to. So I was talking about the tyrannical mother or nanny state, form of tyranny government that's, that the New World Order 1 government, agenda pushers are going to use to control us. And the idea with that is they don't want individual thinkers. If you think about it, they only value you in so much as you contribute to their Borg collective, So it's pretty insidious, right? Because they take advantage of our desire as human beings to serve each other and to, be a part of something bigger than ourselves, and to be a part of a community and a group and a team and all this. Like, but look, there's plenty of ways to do that don't involve being part of something that's been decided for you. Like, obviously, just use your mind a little bit about it, Like, what, I always ask people, like, do you personally know, like, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Like, how do you know that they're not just using you? Which they are, So how about you take back your own energy and you put it towards something better? It's raining. Whatever. We're going to power through. It's funny because, of course, the Satanists are always talking about being self-interested and being individuals. They have that part right. The part they have totally wrong is that they think they get to make their own rules about this place, meaning Earth and the universe, right? The only true law on Earth is natural law, the law of cause and effect and true morality, which is that there is an objective difference between right and wrong, and that all effects correspond perfectly without fail to the cause. Everything is perfect, everything is in its place already, like it's raining, I'm getting wet, right? The high-level Satanists that make up all of man's laws are able to get around this cause and effect and essentially play God because we all just go along with it. They want to make us all think that we have to follow their rules. There are consequences for your individual actions as a human being that have nothing to do with all these institutions that have been set up around us to control us. And I would say that the consequence of our actions of just going along with, these man-made laws, these, governments and man-made laws and so-called law and order and criminal justice, like, the consequence of humanity on the whole, just going along with that and not thinking for ourselves as individuals, is that we're more enslaved. The more people that just go along with it, and the more people that go, well, those are the rules, like, sure, I'm going to take away your freedom, I'm going to try to force you to wear a mask and get the job, like, oh, but those are the rules, it's just the rules, I'm just doing my job. Like, I'm trying to point out these patterns because they, to just make them more obvious. Doing this work just, and this, these people that, like, I've been communicating with and talking to who are doing this work of trying to educate humanity about the truth, like, that's the right team to be on, like, those are the right people to be helping and receiving help from and everything. But I'm doing it as an individual on my own, like, I'm speaking for myself, and that's how it should be. If we want to form strong communities, we have to be strong individuals. We can't be weak individuals and just glom onto something, because that's what I was trying to do with Tyler, Doing this work to spread the truth to humanity is done out of self-respect. If you start to listen to some of these people that I'm talking about, you'll see that they respect themselves enough to speak up. They know that they have something important to say, and they're serving the rest of us by sharing their life experiences and saying, this is how I was wrong. This is actually the right way to go, everyone, right? That's what I'm doing. Like, I was wrong. I was going the wrong way. Like, I'm going the right way now. They're using their voices and they're honing their self-expression. And if you listen to those types of people, then you'll learn from them. And you'll want to be someone who could become like them. And I would say by talking and communicating with people doing this too, who do have this high consciousness and level of self-respect, like, your consciousness level goes up. Like, I try to listen to content creators every day. I mean, mostly I listen to Konrad and Dan, but, like, there's tons of awesome people for people to listen to, and you take that in, like, it's vibrations, it's words, you take it in, your consciousness level goes up by listening to these people, That's why I reached out to Konrad, because I wanted to do what he was doing. I wanted to be that confident and just tell it like it is. And if you start to watch him, you'll see how much confidence and self-respect he has, I want to clarify that no one is responsible for me and my actions. In the Kelly Confessions video, I told people, you all have to hold me accountable. Actually, no one has to hold me accountable. I felt defensive about admitting how manipulative I'd been, but I want to clarify that no one is responsible for my actions. I'm holding myself accountable by doing this, and that's fine. We do all have to hold ourselves accountable to this information that I'm trying to tell you. Don't just ignore it. I realized that by saying that, I was trying to give up my own personal responsibility again. That's something my dad would have done, and he did try to make me responsible for his emotions many times. The whole problem here is that most people are not taking responsibility individually for their own lives, so I'm going to continue to check myself and stop attempting to make other people responsible for me. So I reflected a lot more again on the Kelly Confessions video, and the part where I was like, you all have to hold me accountable, like, I cringed when I watched that now, but it's fine. It's okay to fall on my face as long as I come back and correct myself. But, like, the point I was making is that, like, okay, if people want to, be like, yeah, Kelly, you were so bad and manipulative and all this, it's like, well, that means you're going to have to look at yourself too, because, you're a human being like me. You've grown up in this world like I have, living under tyranny and living under this, not like growing up not being someone who was taking full responsibility for your life, like just like I was, so I was just trying to get people to recognize that. But I'm holding myself accountable. I'm really working on not putting my emotions on other people and like taking full responsibility for them. I can express my emotions, I can express my anger and resentment and stuff, but like, there's obviously a line to be drawn there. It's like, well, what am I going to do about it then? Right? The same idea applies to when I talk about Tyler and what happened. I want to emphasize that I'm not trying to contact Tyler in any way. I'm not trying to get him to do anything. I noticed myself feeling a little bit vengeful towards him because he basically did reject me. But I want to emphasize that I'm not trying to get revenge on anyone or force anyone to talk to me. That goes the other way too. I know in the second video I made where I introduced my whole goal, I said I'll talk to anyone. That's true, but I don't have to talk to people or involve them in my life if I don't want to. This is called setting boundaries, and I did not learn how to do this fully when I was young. The controllers of our worlds don't want us to have personal boundaries and be in charge of ourselves, because then we would be free. Young people are not taught proper boundaries and how to set them because often our parents didn't learn how to do that themselves. Public school is a perfect example of this. You don't have boundaries because you are forced to be there against your will and forced to learn the indoctrination of the state. I know a lot of teachers are good and do try to teach their students truth. But at the end of the day, if you are around people that require you to ask permission to go to the bathroom or you'll be punished, that is control, abuse, and total disrespect for the individual and their boundaries. I want to emphasize that I don't want to be in contact with Tyler because I need to speak for myself no matter what he thinks or does. So yeah, boundaries, right? Like with my dad and in ways with my mom too. It's like she's not getting off the hook, but mostly with my dad, like, and that goes into this all these, unhealthy dynamics I've had with, with men in my life. Like, he did not set, proper boundaries with me, and he did not like respect my boundaries, and or it was very difficult for me to say no to him because I had to walk on eggshells around his emotions, because he could blow up at little things, or he would give me the cold shoulder, if I said no and I didn't, or guilt trip me, right? Like, so I didn't learn those boundaries. I thought, okay, in order to get love and validation and attention and protection from my father, I have to just kind of be submissive and, mold myself to whatever. And it's not like this extreme thing, but it is, I mean, it's extreme enough that it's affected most of my life, and I've been trying to undo it for most of my life. So so right, this goes along to like, I noticed myself getting vengeful or kind of, having these thoughts towards Tyler, and they've gotten a lot less, which is good, but it's like, I was allowing myself to I was just kind of losing myself in that relationship with him, being like, I'll just do whatever. And then I didn't really want to. And so I was getting resentful. And then of course that blew up in my face, and I had my rock bottom moment, and he cut me out of his life. And I realized, like, holy shit, I'm not standing on any real solid foundation for myself in my life. So yeah, obviously I was resentful at him for that, even after the fact. So it's like, I'm not trying to get in contact with him. A while ago, we decided to go our separate ways and, not talk to each other, not like intentionally reach out to each other. So that's important for me, and I'm sure it is for him too, but I'm just speaking for myself because, like, I need to be able to tell the story and to, maybe fall on my face sometimes if I have to, whatever the case may be, like, on my own without being worried about what he's going to think about it, or do or whatever, right? And that's the whole point that I'm trying to make of this whole entire thing, is like, we've got to be totally radically responsible for ourselves and our own being, and not, have this dependence or like try to control other people. and obviously that can't happen at all at once because I'm still struggling with a lot of that myself, but you just chip away at it a little bit every day. I've been continuing to harbor this resentment towards Tyler for basically rejecting me, but I have been letting go of it little by little. I'm not going to focus on that feeling anymore. I have been learning how to control my emotions more, not to repress them or leave them unexpressed, but to take care of them myself. I noticed I was crossing this boundary with people that are listening, and I was trying to get you guys to take responsibility for my emotions, so I'm not going to do that anymore. It was important for me to get that story out about my dad and all this and the Grand Canyon trip and the story about Tyler, just to get it out and get it off my chest. But it's like, you guys, like, whatever. I'm not trying to make people feel in it. I was like kind of thinking to myself, well, I am trying to express the anger that I feel at this, you know, the tyranny and control going on in the world and how I've been controlled and how other people are still allowing themselves to be controlled. But at the end of the day, I'm the one that has to do something about that. So, yeah, boundaries. That's my point.